Welcome back to Progressively Incorrect, a podcast about factory model, militaristic, carceral inquiry. All right. Welcome back to Progressively Incorrect, a podcast about factory model, militaristic, carceral, inquiry-based learning. I am your host, Dr. Zach Groeschel, and in this episode, I will be speaking to an absolute legend of teacher blogging and lefty-trad education, Adam Boxer. Adam is the editor of the Research Ed Guide to Explicit Direct Instruction, author of Teaching Secondary Science, and for me, the LeBron James of practical advice about how to actually teach a lesson. After recent spats on Twitter about homework being super bad, but letting kids learn with their phones being super good, it was highly refreshing to listen to Adam talk about strategies for gaining students' attention and increasing everyone's effort on their assignments. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give Progressively Incorrect a 5-star rating. Now that's enough for me. Let's go on over to Adam Boxer. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am here with Adam Boxer. How are you doing, Adam?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me on.
I'm really excited about some of these topics, maybe some controversial topics in here for some people. Please go ahead and let's start by introducing yourself.
Okay, so I'm Adam. I'm a science teacher, so I teach a school in North London. I teach in what's called an academy, so I guess it compares roughly to like a charter school in the States. So we have, relatively inner city kind of intake. I teach science there 3 days a week, and I work there as lead practitioner, which means that part of my role is to help other teachers get better at teaching. And then that leaves 2 days a week spare. So 1 day a week, I am the education director of Carousel Learning, which is an innovative online learning platform aimed at kind of boosting student knowledge and retention and reducing teacher workload. And the rest of the time I get to travel and go around the country and go to different schools, look at different classrooms. People ask me for support, people ask for training, so I get to do a lot of writing, a lot of webinars, and yeah, that's me.
And you mentioned sort of the type of students that you work with. I remember you posted like a graph or a table, I guess, of like that those PS8 results, I guess they're called
P8.
P8. Where basically growth, I'm guessing. So where do you kind of fall when it comes to like kind of demographics at your school?
So just some context for your listeners who I assume are predominantly American.
Right. Yeah, I guess.
So here we have standardized assessments across the entire country. So whereas the only standardized assessments you have in the States are SATs, I guess, we have standardized assessments that students sit age 16 called GCSEs. Pretty much every student in the country sits 2 science GCSEs, 2 English GCSEs, 1 maths GCSE, and then others. So history, geography, languages, music, whatever. What Progress 8 does... Sorry, 1 second. That's my child crying. Back in a second. It's okay. Wife got there first. So broadly, so if you think we don't do grades as letters at GCSE in these exams, they're numbers, right? So 9 is the highest, then 8, then 7, 6, 5, etc. And I guess if you think about it, you can measure you can hold a school to account for the absolute attainment of what students are getting. So you can say, right, well, how many of your students got a 5, which is a strong pass in English and maths? How many of your students got a 6 in this? How many students got a 7, whatever? Or you can hold them to account for progress. So what you do is you say, out of the 500,000 students in year 11, so that's 10th grade, the kids who are sitting these exams, how many of them started secondary school, which starts in 6th grade, at a particular level of attainment? So, let's say you take your benchmark at, say, 100 points. So kid comes in at 6th grade and they've got 100 points. And then they come out at the end of year 11 with, all of their grades are grade 5. And then you look across the entire country and you say, right, well, on average, all of the kids who go in with 100 points are coming out with an average of a grade 5. Okay. And then what you do is you say, right, well, let's look at your school. How do your kids who have come in with points of 100 come out? And if, say, in my school, kids who have got 100 points when they come out with grade sixes across the board, then we say you've got a progress rate of 1, because that means you've added 1 grade everywhere compared to if they'd been in a different school, which is a progress measure, which is really neat, because it's I think you guys call it value added, right? It's about how you're adding value for this particular student, as opposed to their absolute attainment. You're looking at their relative attainment compared to their peers across the country who have a similar kind of profile when they join the school. So as a school, we do really well. Our progress rate last year was 1.03, which is really, really good, and puts you in the top few percent of schools in the country. And I think what you're referring to is I was talking about the metrics specifically for disadvantaged students. So what we call, whatever, you just call them disadvantaged. For the minute, we just call them disadvantaged students. They, on average, across the country, have lower outcomes, lower progress than other students, and obviously there's reasons for that. They have less stable home environments, they have less ability to do external work, they might be traveling further, they might have less parental support, they might be young carers, they might be having to do weekend jobs, all sorts of things that their more advantaged peers don't have to do. And in our school, so in our last cohort, we had 44% of our students were classified as disadvantaged. And if you filter all the schools in the country, and you just look at schools who were over 40%, so who were serving the most deprived intakes, we were 8th in terms of our overall progress rate across the country. England, that is, not Scotland or Ireland or Wales, or Northern Ireland or Wales, whatever, which is really good. We still have a lot of room to grow. There's a big gap in our school between the disadvantaged students' outcomes and the advantaged students' outcomes, and we work really hard to try and close that. But obviously we're proud of what we've done. But yeah, there's definitely room to grow for sure.
And I think that's why I was really excited to have you on. In addition to the fact I've read your blog, Achemical Orthodoxy, right, for many, many years. I really want to talk about how you did sort of achieve those results. Let's start with something that, for some reason, it's the trend to kind of get rid of it. We're talking about homework. It seems like a lot of people kind of don't like homework anymore. They find it soul crushing or inequitable, but you've kind of blogged about homework, and you've kind of figured out a system that kind of works with, using different tools and different methods. Could you maybe, tell us your stance on homework? Should we use it? Should we lose it? And how should we go about, setting it?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to be really clear that I would never, just to hop back half a step, I would never ascribe any one thing to why our school has managed to do well. So, homework will be a part of it, and the culture we create around what students are expected to do out of lessons is a part of it. But there's also just brilliant teaching day in, day out in the lessons. The science, so I was head of science up until this September. And the science results are more modest than the rest of the schools. I'm not ashamed of that. I don't shy away from that. But obviously, the context is different. We had we might have had challenges that other departments might not have had, and all of that stuff comes together to create a very complex picture. So I just want to make sure that nobody comes away from this thinking that either Adam is taking credit for the results of the wonderful Totteridge Academy, or that there's a simplistic picture that can possibly emerge about what dictates academic achievement, either at the individual level or at the institutional level. And homework for sure is a part of it. And I think that I have strong sympathies with people who think that homework isn't great, and we should try and avoid homework if we can. Probably not for the same reasons. I think some people are really extreme here. I think that there's been quite a big trend of people, I don't know if they're deliberately saying this or they're just pretending, but making out like fringe issues are mainstream. So, for example, for sure, there are students who are angelic in school, and then at home they're absolutely impossible. And that might be, they might have some diagnosed issue that so for example, autistic kids a lot will mask in school, so they'll be in complete mental turmoil in school the whole time, but they'll be masking, so you won't see it. And then the second they get home, mask off, and they'll really, really struggle. And I have tremendous sympathy for that. I used to teach in an autism specialist school, so it's something that I care quite deeply about. Now, there's two things to say here. The first thing is that you'd have to be a monster to still say to the parents, no, we expect you to sit down and do an hour and a half's work with the kid after school. Like, it's just insane. Like, no one in their right mind should say something like that. And if some idiot somewhere did say something like that, well, that's not like an issue with homework. That's not a reason to ban homework across the board. It's a reason to ban that person. Like, they're just, it's just a silly thing to do. And then the second thing is, like, how many kids are there like that? Not many. Yeah. So at the moment, I would say for the last 3.5 years of my teaching, I've had maybe 2 or 3 kids who I've just said, nah, forget it with the homework. Just don't do it. I don't care enough. I don't want you to cause problems with your parents at home. I call home a lot. I have, there's a bunch of parents that I have. They're just in my phone. Like, I just call them, a lot week to week. Parents says to me, I'm really struggling with the homework thing. And it's like, they're fighting fires everywhere, right? They're trying to get the kid to do their homework. They're trying to get the kids to do their chores. They're trying to get the kid to just not be rude to them. They're trying to get the kid to stay home in the evening rather than going out and hanging on street corners. They're worried that their kid is falling in with the wrong crowd. They're worried about this. They're worried about that. They're worried about the other. Like, I want them to worry about homework as well. Like, I'm not man. I'm not a monster. Yeah, just forget it. I don't care enough, right? But for the bulk of our students, the overwhelming majority of our students, this issue does not stand in their way. Now, despite that, I think that students are in school from, on average, from 8:30 to like 3:15, sometimes 3:30. Yeah, they're doing pretty much a full working day, right? Like, in the same way that, a grown adult might be doing 9 to 5. Yeah. And the thing that I sort of worry about is that, like, making students do more work on top of that, it's just, it just feels like a lot. Not because it's mean, not because it's oppressive or anything. Just because, like, we'd say it's okay for an adult to do 9 to 5, to check in and check out. It should broadly be okay for a kid to do that as well. The problem is that I think that a little bit isn't going to hurt anybody. Yeah, like a kid who does 8:30 till 3:30. Most of our kids, they'll be home within half an hour. That's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, you've got like 5-6 hours to burn before you're going to sleep. And most of our kids are not like when I get home, I have to read to my kids, I have to play with my kids, I have to put the kids in the bath, I have to do the washing, I have to do the dishes, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that, I have to do podcasts. Like, I don't have to do, I love doing podcasts like this. I have to do my emails, I have to do my domestic stuff, everything builds up. And by the time, it's 9 o'clock in the evening and I'm like, right, now I'm done. Kids aren't like that. Yeah, they get home and they're immediately scrolling on their phones, watching videos on YouTube or whatever. And I think some people online also have this like idyllic view that, like, the kids go home and they embark on creative journeys of self-discovery and they connect with the world and they start reading, they're reading Dostoevsky and they're sitting under trees and writing poems and making watercolors and stuff like that. And it's just nonsense. Am I allowed to swear on your podcast? I don't know what
it's fine.
Yeah, it's just bollocks. It's just total bollocks. Is bollocks a word in the States? I don't know.
No.
It's bollocks.
No.
It's bullshit. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good. It's good.
It's boo hockey. It's just not a thing, right? So I think that we need to be like totally. I'm a very, very pragmatic man. I'm totally realistic. My head. I used to be a philosopher. I'm not anymore. Yeah, I don't really do philosophy or ideology stuff like that as much as I used to, because I'm much more interested in just like, what's the reality, right? And the reality is that these kids are not spending their time on all of these lovely pursuits. They're not playing the harp. They're on Fortnite, right? They're on TikTok, or they're doing something that's just out and out destructive. Yeah, they're watching videos of Andrew Tate or whatever it is. Yeah, that's what's happening, right? And in a scenario like that, like, if I give them an hour of homework to do, and that's I don't feel like I'm being overly burdensome or stealing their time or whatever. And then also the curriculum is what it is. Yeah, so you don't have this so much in the States, but we have a national curriculum, right? We have things that the students need to learn. There is absolutely categorically no way in hell an average student can conquer that curriculum without doing any homework. It's not physically possible. Yeah, some kids maybe, and I'm talking like the top 3 or 4%. Everybody else, forget it. It's not a physical possibility. So what that means is that if I decide to not give my students work to do at home, I'm actively disadvantaging them. I'm saying, you know what, my ideology that I think homework is bad and evil and nefarious and controlling and ruins your autonomy and is, you know, supremacist and blah, 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 fascist and carceral is the word you guys love in the States. Carceral. It's carceral. Everything's carceral. Yeah, it's not carceral. Some of it's not. But even like, I'm just disadvantaging my students. I'm just saying to them, because I've got these highfalutin ideas that bear no conflation with reality whatsoever, I'm going to say to you, you're going to get worse grades. And the simple fact is that if I give my kids worse grades because of my ideology, I failed them. Yeah, I've done my job badly. I've limited their life choices. I've not allowed them to become fully autonomous adults and to be able to kind of author their own destinies. And that for me is highly problematic. So I don't think homework. I don't want you to come away from this thinking that I think that homework is it like a necessary evil. I think that homework is a necessary inconvenience, no more than that. Yeah, it's when, you know, you can be totally reasonable about homework. You can be totally empathetic and responsible and non-invasive and non-oppressive, and you know, and thereby make some inroads to securing student progress without being a total douchebag.
Perfect. And, you know, I wonder exactly how you kind of recommend to the teachers you work with, or, you know, suggest to others kind of like some parameters, some guidelines around assigning homework so it doesn't go into that realm of, you know, wasting their time, making unnecessary stress and so on.
Yeah, this is a good question. It's a big question, and it's not an easy question to answer, because the simple fact is that homework is much, much, much easier to get wrong than it is to get right. Whereas other teaching strategies are easier to get right than to get wrong. You know, like I advocate mini whiteboards a lot. For example, it's much easier to get mini whiteboards right than it is to get them wrong. Homework is much easier to get it wrong than it is to get it right. And we've spent a lot of time at Carousel trying to figure out what it is that makes a good homework, because there's a lot of research out there, but a lot of the time the research doesn't provide you with concrete tips as to what to actually do in the classroom, how to write a policy. Yeah, it might survey, you know, a bit of homework research might survey a whole bunch of students, look at the number of hours spent doing homework and correlate that with outcomes. Okay, yeah, it's one way of doing it, sure, but it doesn't actually tell me what to do other than the fact that homework improves outcomes. And there are other studies like this as well, but that are better and you know, have more useful constructions. But still, it's fraught. So we recommend a few things. And I wrote a long article. That's not long. I mean, medium length article called "The 4 Pillars of an Effective Homework Policy," which I'd highly recommend. To people. But basically, we try and conceptualize kind of 4 underpinning planks or pillars. It's called the 4 planks. The 4 planks, yeah, of an effective homework policy. So the first one is access. So the ability of a student to just access the homework, and that works in a physical sense. Do they have a device? If you set them homework that they need to do on a device, do they have a device? Do you know that your students have the ability to access a device whenever they want? Because if they don't, you're lowering the chance by which they can do the homework. Do they have full internet access? Do they have unlimited data? If you've set homework which you need to do on a laptop, or if you want people to make like a presentation on some kind of slide deck, can they do that? Because they can't do that on their phone. So can they access your homework in that regard? So there's physical issues. Another one is passwords. Yeah. So a kid says, you know, you set homework on some kind of platform and the kid doesn't have their password. They've lost their password. They've forgotten their password or whatever. Yeah, most kids, they'll just wait till the date's due. And they say, oh, so I'm really sorry I didn't do it. I lost my password. What are you going to do? you're snookered, right? Because you can't be, oh, well, you should have emailed me. Yeah, they should have emailed you, but they didn't email you. What? You're going to give them a detention for the fact that they don't have their password? Like, they're not going to learn anything from that detention. Yeah, never set student a consequence if in their head they're not going to agree that it's the right thing. If you say to a student, you've got a detention because you should have emailed me, they'll be like, well, what do you want me to do? You said the homework, I didn't have the password. So you've just snookered yourself. And snooker, that's a thing in America. Do you know what snooker is?
No.
Do you know what pool is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so snooker is like grown-up pool.
Oh yeah.
You've never seen snooker? It's got the
I've
bigger
seen
table,
snooker.
the
I've
white
seen
glove.
snooker, yeah.
So when you're snookered, what that means is that the ball is in a place where there's nothing you can do. So if you're like spots, but the white ball is surrounded by stripes, and there's basically no way you can hit the ball such that it's going to hit a spot, right? You're going to end up faulting. Yeah, and the other person's going to end up with a bonus go or whatever. So that's what happened. That's what you've done. You've snookered yourself. Yeah, there's nothing you can do that's going to get that week back. You've set homework that was supposed to take a week. Kid's not done it. It's gone forever. So that's part of it. Access is also about difficulty. So don't set homework that's too hard. Students are much less resilient with homework than they are with classwork. My experience is that a kid will come up, they'll say, let's say I set 10 questions for students to do at home. They'll come to me and they'll say, oh, so I'm really sorry, I only did question 1 and 2. So why? I said, I didn't understand how to do question 3. And I'm like, what about question 4? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what about question 4? You said you didn't understand 3. No, I just didn't understand any of it. And I'm like, well, what's happened here is you just give up like that. Whereas in class, I can coax them, I can cajole them, or they're more likely to just skip it and move on. So you have to make sure the homework is of an appropriate pitch as well. So that's plank 1. Plank 2 is about accountability. So it's if the student doesn't do the homework and doesn't have an excuse to not do the homework, or does it to a poor standard, what's the follow-up? Are you going to put them in a consequence? Are you going to put them in detention? Are you going to call home? What's the next step? Super important. Then the next one is value. And by the way, again, when I say accountability, that doesn't mean be mean, right? So always, whenever the first time a student doesn't do their homework, I'm always super supportive. I say, okay, look, I noticed you haven't done the homework. Look, it's your first time, yeah? So you're not in trouble. Don't worry about it. I'm going to assume that something happened and then you couldn't do it. I want to see it by tomorrow morning. And if I don't see it by tomorrow morning, I'll be upset. Can you do that for me? Yeah, great, perfect. If it's not done by tomorrow morning, where's the homework? They say, oh, I'm really sorry. Blah, blah. Okay, look, don't worry. It's my job to help you. It's my job to help you learn. You're going to come back in lunch today and we're going to look at it together. And we get a Chromebook out and I check that they know how to log in. I check they know how to do the homework. I watch them do it. If they then don't do it the next time, it's a different conversation. I don't know what you want from me here. I don't know. Yeah, I was so nice to you. You didn't do it the first day. And I said I'd like it by the next morning. You said to me that you could do it by then, and then you didn't do it. And then I said to you, come in lunch, and we looked at it. We did it together in lunch. I lost my lunch for you. Yeah. And now it's a week later, and you've not done the next homework. Yeah, I'm getting very worried that you don't care about this and you don't care about the time that I'm spending on you. Do you hear me shouting at the student? Do you hear me yelling at the student? Do you hear me traumatizing the student? Of course not. But I'm holding them to account, right?
A lot of people would say at this point, like, because that was kind of one of the arguments on some Twitter fiasco that happened to me, which was that like we shouldn't assign a grade to homework, but these are different systems. And you were talking already about sort of the goal of getting as much out of the curriculum as you can, and also passing a test that's coming up pretty soon. I mean, what do you think about that idea of giving grades to homework assignments?
I don't give grades to anything. I mean, kids doing it. If kid does a big assessment, right? We do we do 2 assessment points in the year for most year groups. They do an assessment in January. They do an assessment in the summer. They get a grade for that. But why would they need a grade for anything else? Well, it's not meaningful. Yeah, we just don't do it. They've got a percentage score, right? They do a carousel quiz. Yeah, they've got 50, 20 questions or whatever. They got however many right. They get a percentage. Yeah, but like, there's no grade there. It's I don't want to get too technical, but it's not a valid way of assessment, and it doesn't actually achieve anything. There's no point. I mean, we've known since 1996, Kluger and Denise's classic paper. I can't remember what the thing's called now. I don't know.
On feedback, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the one on feedback. Yeah, just don't put grades on the thing. It just doesn't. All that happens is that students end up focusing on the grade and not focusing on anything else. So just don't bother. Anyway, so that was accountability, and yeah, I will give detentions to students who don't do their homework repeatedly, happily. And believe it or not, that drives up completion rates. And I generally have 95% plus completion rates without having to chase. And when a student hasn't done it, normally it's it's 2 months since the last time they didn't do a homework. A kid came and they fess up as well. A kid came to me today before the lesson even started. He said, "So I haven't done the homework." I was like, "Tell me why." And he goes, "We're moving house. It's been very complicated at home. We don't have the Wi-Fi, blah, 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 blah." Okay. I don't care. Like, like, what am I going to do? Like, I said to him, "Okay, when's it all going to be sorted?" He's like, "I don't know. The house is a building site. Like, there are saws and drills on the floor." I'm like, I just don't care enough, right? Like, I was at my nan's house and she doesn't have internet. Sorry, a nan is a grandmother, and she doesn't have internet, or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And then I call her. I'm like, "Does your mum know that you didn't do the homework?" And she's like, "Well, it's because I'm at my nan's house." I'm like, "I'm just going to call your mum." He's like, "No, you don't need to do that. I'm just going to call your mum." And then I'll call their mum right in front of them. And I'll be like, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Whatever. Is David staying at his nan's at the moment?" She's like, "No." I'm like, right, okay. So David said to me that he hasn't done his homework because he's staying at his nan's. So what I'm gonna and obviously that's really disappointing because he's not done his homework and he's lied to me about it. Mum's like, "I'm furious." So I'm like, okay, right, well, David's going to have a detention for that. So I'll do a full hour. I'll have half an hour for not doing the homework and half an hour for lying to me because that really upsets me. And Mum will be like, "Absolutely, put him on the phone now." And I'm like, no. You can deal with him when he gets home. I'm just going to take him off now. That kind of stuff. and like you do stuff like that enough and it just stops happening, right? It just, the kids don't play those games anymore, which is why we get 95% plus completion. You need to invest a bit of time, you need to invest a bit of emotional capital, and a bit of follow through. So you need to show a bit of teeth here and there, but it's worth it. So let's go back to our planks. We had, our first one was access, our second one was accountability, third is value. Yeah, so most of the time students don't understand why they're doing homework. They just think it's they just think it's something that teachers do, but they don't get the purpose of it. So that needs to be like readily communicated and very, very clear to students. And what I tend to do is I tend to knock off planks 2 and 3 via one strategy, which I call integration. So I integrate classwork with homework. So I always make sure I've checked student homework. I show students the process of checking homework. So in Carousel, you mark students' answers. It's really, really quick, but I will do that every so often in class in front of students. I'll put it on the board and they will watch me marking it. So Carousel automatically builds what's called whole class feedback. So it picks up on things that students got wrong. You can pick up on subtle errors, things that you want to discuss as a class, and again, display those in the room. And again, that shows students that you care. It shows students that that there's a value to what you're doing, that it plays through into classwork. I'll compliment student. If a student gets something right in class, I'll say, "Guys, everyone listen up, please. David's answer was brilliant there." And I know why David gave such a good answer. It's because his Carousel work is on point. And I need you guys to realize that the reason why David's doing so flipping well in class, and the reason why David is bossing his assessments, is because he's doing his Carousel properly. That is absolute dynamite for getting students to understand the value and the purpose of what you're doing. Just that simple integration. And all too often it doesn't happen. Teachers will set homework, they'll check it's done, and that's it. But there's no what's next. Sometimes I'll do, not sometimes, actually pretty often, at least once a fortnight, I take questions from the homework and use those as my starter in the lesson. And I'll say to students explicitly, they know why I chose those questions. I'll say, "Why did I choose these questions?" And the kid will say, "Well, because they prove to you if we're doing the work properly at home. Absolutely, well done. And we have a whole talk about the importance of knowledge and building knowledge over time and the way that plays through into classwork, etc., etc. And then the final plank, so just to recap again, 1 was access, 2 was accountability, and 3 was value. And we achieved both accountability and value through integration. And number 4 is just, it's got to be purposeful. When I was in my early teaching, I set all kinds of bullshit homework. Make a project about whatever, and it just ends up being a copy and paste exercise. I used to set this homework about, they had to find out something about their house, or, notice things in their bus journey on the way to school, or build a model atom or a model cell, or like this extended piece of writing with multiple success criteria. Like, it's just nonsense, and the students don't learn anything. Whereas what I do now with Carousel is like, it's so clean, it's so clear. It's literally just questions and answers and flashcards. It's just a quiz. It's just knowledge building. Yeah, just knowledge build, knowledge build, knowledge build, knowledge build. And it's like, it just means that I'm more put it like this. What you want is to get a student to learn stuff. So you want a student to become, say, to start as student X, who doesn't know stuff, and to become student Y, who does know stuff. And the way you get them to go from X to Y is by giving them work, right? The problem is, with most of the work, it's possible for X to do the work and turn into Z, or to stay as X. What I want is to give them work that I know guarantees they're going to go from X to Y. And just simple questions, simple retrieval practice, simple quizzing, and simple flashcards means that I know they're going to move. I can't know for sure, but there's a higher likelihood that if they do it, they'll turn into Y, rather than stay as X or turn into Z. And part of the flaw with so many homeworks is that you set the work, the kid does it, but the intended outcome is not achieved.
Perfect. And it sounds great. There's so many pieces there that I think people might take for granted. You mentioned like really a culture of accountability and around knowledge building. I imagine your school really has kind of taken on that knowledge rich sort of angle in the curriculum, and that everything kind of feeds into that. Why do we do homework? It's because of our do nows. Why do we do these do nows? Because we need to retrieve from long-term memory, and I just love hearing all these pieces as they kind of work together.
Yeah, it's a system, and it's taken a long time to get to where we are, and there's like an implementation thing here as well, that all these ideas I can give you, they're great, but if they don't actually happen in the room, they're meaningless. So you have to build policy and accountability structures within a team as well, and we're all accountable to each other, and we all know that if our doors are always open, right? And if somebody, whoever they are, the most junior member of the department, walks into my class at the beginning of the lesson and sees that I'm not doing the carousel quiz, which is our departmental policy, she'll be like, Adam, what's the deal? Why aren't you following departmental policy? Right? And I'd be like, I don't have a good answer for that. I need to sort my life out. But again, stuff like that takes time.
Wow. Well, let's move to the next question. Moving from homework, this is the one I'm actually the most excited about. So as an instructional coach, I've benefited immensely from your blogs on ratio, or sort of similar, that class eye view. Many of these are inspired by Teach Like a Champion. Can you maybe take us through like the ratio lens, some scenarios related to ratio, and how you kind of see that and use that in your classroom?
Yeah, I mean ratio I could talk about for hours. Because ratio fulfills every criteria in terms of I'm in the business of helping teachers get better at their craft, right? Now, when part of that is about feedback and about telling a teacher, you did this, we need to do this next time because it will be better. And ratio is an idea. It's not a strategy, it's an idea, right? That applies, it hits the holy trinity. It applies in many lessons. So for example, let's say I see a teacher explaining photosynthesis badly. And I say to them, oh, by the way, I've got this brilliant explanation of photosynthesis. Here, look at this. Well, that's great, but they're not going to use it till next year. So A is it needs to apply in lots of lessons. B It needs to be powerful, and it needs to really make a difference to student learning. There are all sorts of things that could happen in a lot of lessons, but like, are they going to make much of a difference? I don't know. Yeah, like for example, when you call a register, do you call registers? Roll call. Yeah, you do roll call.
Attendance attendance.
Yeah. So some people, they're really effusive. Oh, good morning, David. It's so nice to see you. I just go, David, Daniel, whatever. Now, you could give me feedback and you could say, Adam, be a bit warmer when you call the register. And that would apply in every single lesson. Does it make any difference to student outcomes? I don't know. Yeah, so there's no guarantees there. So A, again, to recap, was, what did I say A was?
A was applies.
B. Oh, A was applies in lots of lessons. B is powerful. You're right. Sorry. It's been a long day. And number three is that it's common. Every lesson that I observe, there are problems with ratio. And I often, I'm really blessed. I get to talk to a lot of teachers. I get to observe a lot of lessons. And, I gave a webinar literally, what is it today? Tuesday. I gave a webinar literally last night to a whole bunch of science teachers. And I was honest with them. Yeah. I'm not the person on this webinar who's taught the most science lessons. I've been teaching 10 years. I've done a decent stint, but there'll be people in the room who have taught longer. Sure. But it's very rare that I meet someone who's seen more lessons than I have. Very rare. And in almost every single one of those lessons, there are problems with ratio. So having bigged up ratio, I think it might be time to tell your listeners what ratio is. Put it like this. Let's say, so in a lesson I observed today, the teacher was doing some questioning. She was using mini whiteboards, and there was a follow-up question that she asked. It was a French lesson. It was a follow-up question that she asked. And the student was a bit quiet, and she moved towards the student and asked them to repeat what they'd said. And the student did. And she goes, yeah, absolutely, well done. And then moved on. Nobody else could hear. I couldn't hear, right? And I was 2 tables back. Now, what happens is that I'm not listening now because, I'm just sort of sat there. Am I participating in the lesson while somebody else is talking and I can't hear them? No. And there's a real problem there because it means that it means that students aren't participating in the lesson. Let's say a teacher is in the habit of letting students, of only asking students with their hands up for an answer. Well, what that means is that I can sit in the class and I know that I'm never going to get picked if I don't put my hand up. So I can sit and I can doodle, I can look out the window. I don't have to participate in the lesson. Let's say a teacher, let's say I'm in the middle of a lesson, yeah? And teacher is doing some verbal questioning. They ask somebody else, Zach, they ask Zach a question. And Zach says, oh, sorry, can you repeat the question? And the teacher repeats the question. Now, why does Zach need the question repeated? Because Zach wasn't listening. Which means that you now but what you've done is you've said, oh, that's okay. Don't worry, Zach. That's all right. You don't need to listen in my lesson. I'll just repeat the question again for you, mate. It's fine. But what that means is that I'm sitting there and subconsciously, because not a lot of this is a conscious process, but subconsciously I'm like, oh, well, I know that if Sir asks me something and I'm not listening, I just ask Sir to repeat it and I'm okay. I'm in the clear. Well, what if Sir does ask a question, I don't know the answer, and I just say, oh, I don't know. And Sir's like, okay, fine, and moves on to somebody else. Oh, win. I can opt out of this lesson. I can coast. I don't need to do anything. So ratio is all about, are students listening? Are students participating? How many students are listening? How many students are participating? And that's why it hits those 3 things. So number 1 was, how many lessons does it apply in? Every lesson. Anytime you're interacting with a class, anytime you've got students in the room, there's a question of ratio. Are they participating? Are they paying attention? Are they listening? Are they thinking? Number 2, is it powerful? Obviously, there's nothing more powerful, right? Because however good your explanation is, however good your check for understanding is, however good your independent practice is, if the students aren't listening or aren't participating, they're not going to learn anything. It is the fundamental prerequisite for learning. Without it, learning cannot take place. If your explanation isn't great, learning can still take place. Your check for understanding isn't great, learning can still take place. If your independent practice, it's not great, learning can still take place. If a student's not listening, learning cannot take place. It's the fundamental prerequisite. It's a threshold. It's a portcullis. Without it, no learning can happen. A friend of mine, Mike Hobbis, he says that attention is the gateway to thought, I think, which is a lovely phrase. But like, obviously, if kids aren't paying attention, they're not going to learn anything. It's prerequisite. So that was point 2, which is it powerful? And then point 3 is it common? Honestly, I would love it to not be an issue. I would love to be able to go into every lesson in the lens and see that teachers are constantly in control of where students are paying attention to, what they're thinking about. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And in pretty much every school I go to, every lesson I observe, almost always, the number one piece of feedback is students weren't listening. I'll give you an example. I was watching a highly skilled maths teacher today, and she was doing cubic graphs with a 9th grade class. And she's really good. And she had to give this, I was in there for 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And there are a few occasions where she had to give instructions, and she said to students really clearly, pens down, eyes on me, wait. And she waited. She didn't say wait, she just waited, checked, hold students to account, put your pen down, please, put your pen down, please. Lovely, eyes up here. Super. And then gave an instruction. And there was one occasion where she didn't do that. And the instruction that she gave was about the students had to plug in values into this equation. And there were a lot of negative values. And it's very difficult to do these cubics and negative values in your head. So she said, make sure that when you're doing the negatives, don't do it in your head. Show all of your working. The problem is she'd said to students, she'd broken her own habit, because it's difficult, this stuff. Yeah, it's difficult to be in these good habits and to hold to it consistently. And she said, okay, guys, pens down, eyes on me. I just want to remind everyone. But she didn't pause. She didn't wait. She didn't make sure. She didn't hold students to account. And what I saw when I'm looking at the students is I'm seeing a third of the class is still writing. A third of the class is still working. She gave that instruction about those negative numbers. So I hang around for a bit. And about 4 minutes later, she pulls the whole class back and starts having to explain to them again this issue about the negative numbers. It's predictable. It's so predictable. It's obvious that she had to do that. And when I give her feedback, I'm going to say, yo, what, you had to give that instruction again. Why do you think you had to do that? And it's not because the students are stupid. It's not because they're rude. It's not because they're belligerent. It's not because they're being deliberately difficult. It's not because they're misbehaving. It's not because they're trying to get laughs out of their mates. It's because they're not listening. So she didn't make sure they were listening. And that meant her instruction fell on deaf ears. And then later on, she had to reiterate that instruction. It's like clockwork every single time. It's predictable. So, like I said, it is the number one issue that I see in pretty much every single lesson. We could all do better at it. I know I can do better at it. I catch myself the whole time, right? Because it's not normal, it's not natural, and you have to get into very specific habits and ways of being. I think I'm a lot better at it now than I used to be, but it's hard work.
Oh, totally. I mean, and when I first read, I think I watched a video of you like doing this with like Lego people, right? You were like moving things around, right? And I just realized like there were a few in there that blew my mind that I had never thought of. The one that I definitely wanted to say really has helped a lot of people was this like 3-30-30 technique. And it's like, again, ratio, like you said, is not just about participating. It's also about like, is everybody writing, or is everybody on task? Is everybody listening? Right. And like that 3-30-30, maybe take us through that one, because it's something that is really, it can change your whole practice if you just realize that you can do this.
Yeah, so the first thing is, it's really important. I stole this. Yeah, 3-30-30. I didn't come up with this. Is from Doug Lemov, Teach Like a Champion. Yeah, American. Woo! Americans do some cool things too. But basically, imagine a scenario where a teacher says to students, "Okay, the explanation is finished. Check for understanding finished. Whatever. I want you guys to do questions 26 to 45 in your exercise books." And the students the paper starts rustling. They start working, and the teacher then goes to the student at the front and starts asking a question, and then the student at the back says, "Oh, miss, which question was it again?" She says, "Yes, 25 to 46, whatever it was." Blah 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 blah. I look out on this and I see every single time chaos ensues. Students become fractious. They're not fully focused. They start having a chat with each other, etc., etc. And then what happens? The teacher is still with this one student or whatever, and then the teacher hears all this noise bubbling up and starts having a go at the class. They're like, I didn't ask anybody. I didn't ask anybody to start talking. You know, I said be quiet. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. But what's happened here is that the teacher hasn't ensured that students are settled and calm and working before like moving out into the room. And again, I love a good wait. People underestimate the power of a good wait. And what I advocate is that teacher sets work and then just waits for 3 minutes, which is a long time. You go to a corner of your classroom where you can see everybody and you just wait. And you don't like break that silence. You don't start having a loud conversation with someone across the room. If someone has their hand up, you know, they would need to ask something, just signal to them nonverbal, just wait a sec. I'll be with you in a minute. Yeah. Because even though it might end up with that student has to wait quite a bit, it's worth it because you've got 29 other kids who are doing some good quality work in that time. So you just hang back for 1 minute, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, depends on the class. And then you go to a student for 30 seconds. Give them some help, give them some feedback, go to another student for 30 seconds, give them some help, give them some feedback, and then go back to your spot and wait again. And just check, make sure everyone's settled, everyone's calm, everyone's doing exactly what you want them to. Keep a lid on it. And it's super duper powerful. And part of the reason why it's so powerful is because of it just ensures that everyone's calm and everyone's focused and everyone's doing the right thing, and there's no noise that becomes normal in the room. If you put you make work the thing that's normal. All humans just want to be normal. Yeah, you just want to fit in.
Hey everyone. During this time, Adam's internet went out, and I thought it would be a good opportunity, never done this before on the podcast, to actually go through some of the ratio lens techniques that we didn't talk about when I talked with Adam about ratio lens. I feel like just doing this will kind of give you a better picture of all there is to ratio. And if not, well, this was just a waste of time recording. But here we go. I'm reading this directly from the table in his blog, Ratio Lens, which is on his website. I will link it in the show notes. So instead of asking a question and then saying a student's name and then waiting for them to answer, you should, to build ratio, ask a question, then wait for everyone to think, and then say a student's name. Or instead of having a long interrogative conversation with one student, you should springboard the questions around the room. Instead of repeating questions for students, you should tell them it is not acceptable to not be listening and that you will come back to them later. Is this making sense so far? I mean, all of this is to build the number of students, the percentage of students that are actually participating, that are listening, that are doing the thing you want them to do. So I'll continue. Instead of allowing students to call out and just accepting their answers as because they just like called out, you challenge every instance of calling out and explain to students why it is unacceptable to call out. Doing lots of verbal questioning. You might want to switch that up and use mini whiteboards. You can see everybody's responses that way. Instead of stepping towards speakers, step away from the speaker. I'd like to kind of explore that a bit. I've never done that. So instead of letting students speak quietly, and so no one can hear them, so fewer people can listen and understand what's going on, ask them to speak up or repeat their answers loudly or in that university voice. Instead of letting students not know an answer, gently challenge them and tell them you will come back to them later after someone else has explained it. Instead of giving instructions or clarifications while students are working, pull the whole class back and get full attention before giving your instructions. That's something I work on a lot with teachers. They're basically narrating instructions, and some are listening, but it's very few. And everybody else is working, but probably your instructions are interfering with their working anyway. They can't hear both, right? Instead of giving lots of instructions at once, only give one instruction at a time and wait for students to complete it, visibly checking that they have done it and then moving on. And finally, instead of not circulating during independent practice, do that 3-30-30 technique where you wait that full 3 minutes. And then, as Adam was saying, you can circulate intensively, looking carefully at what students are writing. Okay, let's go back to Adam and his castle.
Sorry, buddy.
No worries. Welcome back. Welcome back. Just a computer malfunction.
No, it's definitely my end. Because I'm English, so I live in a castle, and castles are bad for Wi-Fi.
You were on, it's totally normal. Like you want to set expectation that for the peer culture, it's normal to be
Yeah,
doing all these things.
yeah. So 3-30-30 really helps with that, and and it's funny because like a lot of these movements they're like really micro, they're really concrete, but they make a big difference. You know, I actually I was visiting a school recently, and I was talking to the head of department, and she said that she likes to stand at the back to check that students are working, and I said I don't agree. I said, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should stand at the front. She goes, well, what difference does it make? I can see from here, I can see from there. And I said, because it's not just about whether you can see them, it's also about whether they can see you, right? They need to see that you're looking at them as well. A student who knows that your gaze is upon them is more likely to do the right thing than not. So even that like micro motion of where do I stand can make quite a big difference.
And like you mentioned it too, but like it seems like you can get really really directive when it comes to their pencils, right? And I kind of took this out of this in my own way of interpreting the ratio is like you said, all pencils are down, even though there it might be a student who kind of enjoys continuing on. If they don't put their pencil down, you're losing their attention for the means of participation that you're going to use next. They're going to not know what to do in the next part of the lesson. Let's have everybody's pencils down.
Yeah, that's correct. And the first thing to say here is that it's testable. Yeah. So if a teacher says to you, no, I think it's mean and oppressive to make a student put their pen down, or I think it's okay for a student to be writing notes while I'm talking. So okay, fine, no problem. Go observe them a week later, wait till they're talking, watch a student who's got their pencil and is writing stuff, and go to that kid and just say, what did Miss just say? They're not going to be able to give you a good answer. 99 times out of 100. And the reason for that is because no human being on the planet can focus on the two things at once. It's just not a thing. And then the feedback is different. You say, look, you said to me you don't mind it, but like they're not hearing you. Do you not think that they need to hear what you've got to say? And if they're like, oh no, I still think it's okay, then you've got serious problems because you've got a teacher who doesn't understand it's their job to teach, right? A teacher who doesn't care whether or not students are hearing what they've got to say. Or alternatively, they could have such a low self-confidence that they're like, that they don't even understand the value of the things that they're saying. Either is highly problematic. That doesn't normally happen. Normally a teacher is like, right, okay, I get it. Fair enough. Yeah, kid isn't listening. They need to listen. And interestingly, so sometimes people say, well, it's just meaning, it's just needlessly directive and it's imposing your will on students and it's carceral and it's authoritarian and blah, blah, blah. I mean, sure. Like, I mean, if that's what you think authoritarian means, then yeah, I've got some people maybe who live in various other countries who might disagree with you. So there is that, like we spoke about earlier with the homework, there's a serious magnitude issue where people blow things massively out of proportion. Like I'm just asking them to put their pencil down. Yeah, I'm not asking them to go work in a gulag or whatever. It's just too much. So it's difficult not to laugh at this stuff. But the flip side, I guess, is that I do it with adults as well. So people are like, no, you'd never do that with adults. I'm like, I do. When I'm running a meeting, I insist people close their laptops. Yeah, I'm not gonna have a meeting with someone while they've got their laptop open. And people are like, I said, tell you what, let's continue this conversation. Just give me a minute. I'm just gonna scroll Twitter if you don't mind. Sorry, did you say something? Like, it's just ridiculous. No one would stand for that, yeah? So, like, why would you let them do something else? Right? Like, do you think the stuff that you're saying is important? Do you think they need to hear it? Then let them hear it. Yeah, but you need to guide and direct that process. They're not going to come to it of their own volition. Right? Some students will, again, but most students are, like most human beings, are easily distracted beings and seek the path of least resistance. And that applies in the cognitive as well as the physical realm. And they'll just doodle, or they'll be, looking out the window or whatever. Not necessarily bad. I'm not saying they're bad people. They're just people, right? All humans are the same. Children, adults, exactly the same. If you give them the opportunity to mind wander, they'll mind wander. And in, some people, again, will say, oh, well, mind wandering is fine. That's where really real creative thought happens. I'm like, great, they can do that at home.
Like a really important technique, I think, that within the ratio is cold calling. And that's another one where people will say, I just do not believe that students, should be required to participate, or that they should be sort of caught off guard, I guess. I want them to willingly participate, use that sort of intrinsic motivation to respond or something. I mean, but you use cold calling a lot. Like, why is that so important to this ratio idea?
So a cold call, well executed, has multiple components, but the component that applies most to ratio is is choosing the student that you want and putting their name at the end. Okay, so you ask the question, and then you say their name. Because if I say, for example, Zach, what is blah 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 blah? If I say Zach, what's word equation of photosynthesis? Nobody else in the room needs to listen. Because the second I say Zach, David and Daniel are like, oh, well, who cares? Right, I don't need to pay attention now. Whereas when I say what's the word equation for photosynthesis, if the students know that I could pick anyone, they know they need to be listening. They know they need to be thinking. That's where your ratio comes in, and it's super duper powerful. If you're doing verbal questioning, then cold call is the way to go. If it's stuff you expect them to know, right? If you're like asking them to go beyond the learning or suggest new ideas or whatever, then cold calling is mean, because the student really might not know. But if it's something that you expect them to know, you expect them to be paying attention, then it's totally the right way to do it. You said people don't like it, and I guess people don't like it for two reasons that you mentioned. One was that you shouldn't expect everyone to participate, and two, that it's not nice to catch a kid off guard. So to attack the first one first, I don't understand this at all. The idea that you don't want students to be participating, because if the default inertia is for students to not participate and therefore to not learn. Yeah, most students, most of the time, if you just plug them in a classroom, if you don't do anything to make sure they're listening, they won't listen. Because again, it's like, I mean, it's chemistry. Like, I mean, your default position is to zone out of stuff. It's normal. Yeah, they're not. I don't hate children because adults do it as well. Yeah, this is everyone. It's just a normal human thing, right? If I want them to be listening, then I need to use strategies like cold call. That's what helps them listen. And I want them to participate, because participation is the way that we think. We a lot of time we think through speaking. I want students to express themselves. I want to hear their ideas. I want to know what they've got to say. I want them to feel like they're included in my lesson. You go to some lessons where teachers are just picking kids with their hands up, right? And some kids, their voices are never heard. Right? How can that be right? I don't think that's right. And then, so yeah, I do want everyone to be participating. And then the whole thing about catching students off guard, like, it sounds like it's like that's not the point of cold call. It's not about gotcha. It's not about ooh, I got you. It's about building a culture where it's normal for students to be paying attention. And if a student doesn't know something, then we have to kind of explore that. I have to know that. If I'm not expecting every student to participate, how am I going to know what students know or what students don't know? How can I do my job? It's a physical impossibility. And like when I cold call, if a student doesn't know an answer, well, sometimes that'll be because they haven't been listening. And then I might gently and nicely hold them to account. And I say, I'm worried that you've not been listening. I might ask them to repeat the question just to check if they've been listening. I say, I'm worried you've not been listening. Please do make sure you're listening. It's so important. You won't learn anything otherwise. I'm going to ask somebody else and I'm going to come back to you later. And I follow up on that. Is that mean? Did I embarrass them? Did I laugh in their face and say, ha, 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 you don't know this. Ha, 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 you weren't paying attention. Gotcha, detention. Woo! Like, that's not what's happening here. Right? I'm just trying to make sure they're listening. And I'm cognizant of the fact that they're only human and they're children, right? They're 11 years old. But equally, it's my job to make sure they're listening. So yeah, it's not about catching anybody out. It's not about being rude or mean. It's just about trying to build a culture where everyone's listening.
Yeah, but it seems still that people don't want that kind of school or something. I don't really know even how to respond to it, because in my class we do things differently, because I know that students do their best work if they don't feel the threat of punishment, or I hear things like this, but like I see so much more progress with students when the teacher is regulating the flow of attention, is focusing on the micro behaviors of students. I mean,
Yeah, I think there is, look, once you've made the points that I just made, you know, and I know that my manner and my tone is sometimes sarcastic or dismissive, but like everything I've said I meant, and I think everything that I've said, even if my manner is sometimes sarcastic or dismissive or aloof or whatever, like the points are still substantive, right? The points are still there. If a person doesn't agree with them, you know, such is life. Yeah, the first thing you can do is realize you can't fight every battle. If this person wants to think that you're authoritarian and carceral and you're mean and whatever, okay, fine, whatever. So I do two things here. The first thing is I offer, come visit. Come visit. Doors always open. I'd love to host you. You can come and see. Yeah, you can come and see it in action. Do you know how many people have taken me up on that offer? Do you want to guess?
0.
It is 0. We have a lot of visitors, but these are people who want to learn, as opposed to people who like don't agree and are like trying to find flaws in my practice. It's not happened to date. And again, that invitation is open. I appreciate for Americans, it might be a bit of a commute. The other option is to say is, look, if you, when I speak to people like this, and if I've been employed or commissioned to do work like this, I just do exactly what I said to you before, where I just gather information in the classroom. I see a teacher who isn't cold calling, right? I look at the students. I try and figure out, I just have a look and I think, you know, are they listening? Are they not listening? And I just go to a kid and I say, what did she just say? They won't be able to give me an answer. Or I'll write on a mini whiteboard a question that the teacher's just answered. And I'll put it in front of a kid and I say, what's the answer to this? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. And then I'll just say to the teacher straight up afterwards, I say, look, when you said to the class that, no, actually the products for photosynthesis are, you know, oxygen, water and glucose. And I said to a student, what did she just say? And she said, I didn't know. Are you okay with that? Are you comfortable with that? That they don't know what you're saying? And the teacher, well, I said, okay. Well, later on, I then went to them and I held them in a whiteboard in front of their face. I said, what are the products of photosynthesis? They said, I don't know. I said, are you comfortable with the fact that in your lesson, that student didn't learn what you wanted them to learn because they didn't hear you, because you weren't ensuring they were listening? To date, yeah, all of these, you know, keyboard warriors on Twitter, I've never met them in real life. I don't think they exist in real life, because I do this the whole time. You know, hundreds of teachers across the country, and I just ask them simple questions like this. Are you, you know, if they offer me pushback, I just say, look, are you comfortable with this? No teacher has ever said to me, yes. My principle that I don't want to cold call outweighs my desire for students to actually hear what I've got to say. And I always try, look, teachers are just brilliant people. And again, without fail, I see teachers who are energetic, who are loving, who care deeply about their students, who care deeply about their subjects, who care deeply about teaching, who love teaching, who want to do a good job, who want to secure good outcomes for their students, who want to respect their students, who want to show them dignity and understand their individuality and the differences that exist between them. That is so, you know, it's not universal, but it's pretty damn close to universal. And I say to people, look, what you said was golden. You had stuff, your explanation was glorious. Your instructions were perfect, but they weren't listening. How can you be, like, how can anyone in their right mind be comfortable with that and just think, yeah, fine, I don't care. I'm okay with that.
Well, then we've had like this big push for more student participation, but it's often interpreted differently by who sees that, you know, student participation. There's some people that want, like me, who want to increase the amount of correct answers, that want to have like more high, you know, fast-paced lessons with more turn and talks and more, you know, more participation, more writing. We got 100% of students on task doing the do now and so on. Then there's other people that they see all of this as, I guess, too teacher directed. They see it as like, you know, what they mean by students participating is them going off and sharing their passions and their discoveries in group work and projects, you know. And I don't know. I don't really know how to bridge those two philosophies at all.
Yeah, I mean, the bridge is that you have to start with one to get to the other, right? That in my opinion, that stuff, like that group work, the projects, the following your dreams and things, all of that needs to stem from some kind of like solid foundation that can only be delivered by an expert teacher. That's the bridge, but it's a bridge that only works in one direction, right? Because people at the other end of the bridge don't care for your side of the bridge. They only want their side of the bridge. People on my side of the bridge, I want my students to follow their passions. I want them to be able to be creative and to discover and to analyze and evaluate and to push their knowledge further and to become the pioneers of the future, right? That's what I want, but I also realize that's not going to happen unless they actually know some things, and that otherwise it's just pie in the sky. And I think that's just that's the bridge for me. But again, like there's some people you can't argue with, and it's almost like there's no point. So just say, okay, cool. Can I just come see one of your lessons, and then just go in and just ask the kids some questions, see if they're listening, see if they're paying attention, see if they're actually learning. Kids just done a really great project about something that they found interesting about Brazilian taper or whatever. And just ask them a bunch of questions about the Brazilian taper and see if they actually understand it, or if they were just copying and pasting from Wikipedia. And if they can't give you good answers, well, I'm sorry, like it clearly didn't work. I observed a lesson where a design and technology teacher was having students design they were making a chair. What they had to do is they had to do a plan in pencil, so they draw it out on the draft paper, and then they turn that into a cardboard thing. And basically it was a complete disaster, because what I was seeing is that all the students had done their own design for a chair, and then the teacher couldn't adequately explain what they needed to do next because everyone's chair was different. So he basically had to go student to student, explaining to each one what they needed to do. And what that meant is that he was finding things really difficult because he was having to task switch really quickly and try and figure out what the kid had done and then give them feedback. But also kids were waiting. They were just sat there waiting. And there's no teacher in the world who can explain to students how to do something if there's 30 different pieces of work in front of them. Yeah, it's not possible. And you can't just say to students, take your plan and turn it into a cardboard thing, because into a 3D cardboard model, because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to do that. They don't have the tools. There's no skill there, right? So he had to do that bit, but he had to do it individually. And I said to him, like, it's tremendously inefficient, right? And he was like, yeah, but it's part of the discipline. I want them to be able to make their own designs and stuff. And I'm like, I get that, but they can't. Yeah, like I was in there for an hour and literally no learning took place, right? Each student might have made 5 minutes worth of progress. I'm like, just tell them all to do the same chair, right? And model exactly the kind of chair you want them to do. And then afterwards, once they've done that, they do their own plan, they do their own cardboard model, then they do their own wood model of it. Great, fine. Your next thing is let them design their own chair. But like, if you don't do the one first, you can't do the second thing. And like, and he didn't have a problem with that, because it's the evidence that we have a phrase in England: the proof is in the pudding. You got that phrase? Yeah, the evidence is in front of your face. The simple fact is that every student in there did their little drawing and started their cardboard thing in 60 minutes. What could have taken my 5-year-old daughter 10 minutes, right? Because there's the guidance isn't there. So you can say to me all you like, I want students to be creative and to be able to do it their own way and blah, 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 but it doesn't work. Yeah. And when I say it doesn't work, I mean, I've never seen it working. And I've been in so many of these classrooms, right? So if someone thinks they can get it to work, I'd love to come and see it. I'm pretty skeptical.
Well, final question. I'd love to hear about your new book. What are some of the key insights from teaching secondary science that you think everybody needs to know?
I mean, does anybody write a 100,000 page book and think there are just a few key insights, Zach? I'm just joshing with you. I don't know. I mean, it's a big book. There's a lot of stuff in there. I think the overall structure of how to deliver a teacher-led explicit lesson, how to build in retrieval practice is important. My favorite part personally is a bit about explanations. There's 107 pages about explanations, which is a tremendously underexplored area. I think it's underexplored because I'm not 100% sure why. I think part of it is because it's difficult to figure out what makes a good explanation. And I think that it's difficult because it might be, someone might be able to say, right, well, I can improve your explanation of photosynthesis, but there's no generalizable principle. So I think maybe people have shied away from it for that reason, but I do try and build generalizable principles. And I think also, like we've spoken about for so long, education academia has focused on teachers not explaining things and students kind of discovering things themselves, or inquiring, or working them out themselves, or just, following their own passions, which by definition is opposed to a strong teacher-led explanation. So I think it's probably been neglected from that area as well. But it's my favorite thing. I love talking about explanations. I love building a good explanation, and I think the way that I try and explain stuff is radically different to the kind of modus operandi of most teachers in the developed world. So like, the complete shunning of any kind of presentational software. So there's no PowerPoint, there's no Google Slides, it's all blank canvas, it's all freehand. It's about rendering the abstract concrete, it's about building a narrative structure, it's about bringing students into the explanation through use of stories. It's long, and in my opinion it's quite well developed, and it's the thing that I love talking about the most. I enjoy the most about my practice.
Nice, 100 pages. I'm gonna definitely check that out, because you're right. It's like it gets pretty nebulous when you're like, be clearer, right? It's like, say you didn't, you can say you didn't pause, or it wasn't a fast enough pace, but there's so much more to it, and sometimes that advice is just not useful to teachers who can't really explain.
Yeah, that's quite right, and I just want to be really clear. Yeah, it's across the board that there's nothing about explanations. So in all of the standard teacher training textbooks, there's nothing about explanations. But if you're looking like Rosenshine's Principles of Instruction, he says break material into small chunks. Okay, that doesn't give me much by way of guidance. How small? How small should those chunks be? What order should the chunks be? How should I try and make those chunks themselves readily? Is it literally just that simple? No, it's not. Are there cases where I don't want to break things into small chunks? Absolutely, there are. Lemov, Teach Like a Champion 2.0, there's nothing in there about explanations. Willingham, Why Don't Students Like School? There's a bit about, he has 4 C's of the thing that makes a good explanation, and I think it's an interesting chapter, but I don't think it's applicable to many subjects and many different kind of types of explanations. So I'm not just leveling fire at one side of things. I think it's just generally a bit of a neglected area.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Adam Boxer, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can we find your work, and what's next for you?
So Carousel Learning you can find online. We do operate in the States as well. So yeah, you can just check out Carousel Learning. There's a great video which shows you what we're about. My blogging, you can get at chemical-orthodoxy.wordpress.com, and then definitely check out the ratio stuff. And there was a recent post called The Ratio Lens, where I think I tried to summarize everything. My book is available to all good online retailers like Amazon or John Kett USA, Teaching Secondary Science, a complete guide. What's next for me? I'm keeping chugging. I've got a couple of projects that I'm working on, some cool things that I can't quite talk about yet. But I also do, webinars and stuff like that. So if you go onto my blog, there's a little tab that says CPD/training. So I do webinars on a lot of stuff that we spoke about, and they're open access. Anyone can access them. You just click the link and sign up.
Love it. Hey, I'm really honored to have you on the podcast. I can't wait to see what's next for you. Thank you so much, Adam. You're welcome back on anytime. I appreciate you coming on.
It's very kind. Thank you so much.